For over 30 years, Lewis Hamilton has carried a secret that shaped everything about who he became. A secret about his childhood in Stevenage. A secret about his best friend Marcus Chen. A secret about sacrifice, courage, and the kind of friendship that changes two lives forever. Today, for the first time ever, the seven-time Formula One world champion is ready to tell the truth about the boy who believed in him before the world knew his name. About the promise that was made when they were 8 years old. About the heartbreaking choice that tore them apart just as Lewis's dreams were coming true. This is the story Lewis Hamilton has never told, until now. The cameras clicked like hungry insects around Lewis Hamilton as he walked into the Silverstone Media Center. His silver Mercedes racing suit was still damp with sweat from the British Grand Prix he'd just finished. The familiar smell of rubber and fuel clung to his hair. At 39, Lewis had done this dance 1,000 times before. Smile for the cameras, answer the questions, keep the fans happy. But today felt different. Maybe it was because he'd crossed the finish line at his home track and heard the crowd roar his name. Maybe it was seeing all those young faces in the grandstands, their eyes bright with dreams of racing glory. Or maybe it was just that he was getting older, and secrets have a way of getting heavier with time. Lewis settled into the plastic chair behind the microphone. The room buzzed with reporters from around the world. Questions flew at him like tennis balls from a machine. Lewis, how does it feel to win at Silverstone again? Amazing. The British fans are incredible. What drives you to keep racing at this level? Passion. Love for the sport. The answers came easily. He'd said them all before. But then a young reporter in the third row raised her hand. She looked nervous, maybe new to the job. Lewis, can you tell us about your childhood? What inspired you to start racing when you were so young? Lewis paused. His water bottle stopped halfway to his lips. The question wasn't unusual. He'd been asked it hundreds of times. But something about the way she said it made his chest tighten. What inspired you? The room waited. Lewis could hear the air conditioning humming overhead. Camera flashes popped like tiny lightning strikes. But in his mind, he was suddenly 8 years old again, running down Peartree Way in Stevenage with his school bag bouncing. On his back. You know, Lewis said slowly, setting down his water bottle. His voice was quieter than usual. There's something I've never told anyone about my childhood. Not the whole story, anyway. The reporters leaned forward. This wasn't the usual script. Lewis looked past the cameras, past the bright lights, into a memory that had lived in his heart for over 30 years. When I was 8 years old, I had a best friend named Marcus Chen. He lived 3 houses down from me on our street in Stevenage. The words felt strange in his mouth. He'd never said Marcus's name in public before. Marcus and we did everything together. We played football in the park behind Fairlands Primary School. We rode our bikes to the corner shop to buy sweets with our pocket money. We watched Formula One races on Sunday mornings and dreamed about being drivers someday. Lewis smiled, but his eyes looked sad. Marcus was the smartest kid in our class. He could fix anything that was broken. His family moved to England from Hong Kong when he was little, and his parents ran the local corner shop. Mrs. Chen always gave us extra sweets when we came in. A reporter shifted in his seat. Someone coughed, but Lewis kept talking, lost in the memory. We were inseparable. If you saw one of us, you saw both of us. We made a pact that we'd race together someday, maybe even be teammates in Formula One. Lewis's voice cracked slightly. But Marcus had a secret, something that would change both our lives forever. The room was completely silent now. Even the cameras had stopped clicking. Louis took a deep breath. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his water bottle again. "I've carried this story for over 30 years," he said. I think it's time people knew the truth about what really happened to my best friend, about why I became the person I am today." He looked directly into the nearest camera, as if he was speaking to one person instead of millions around the world. "See? Everyone thinks racing chose me, that I was just naturally good at it. But that's not the whole truth. The real truth is that I learned everything important about courage, about loyalty, about standing up for what's right, from an 8-year-old boy who faced something no child should ever have to face alone." Louis paused again. The reporter who had asked the question was writing furiously in her notebook. Others held their phones up, recording every word. "Marcus taught me that real friendship means protecting the people you love, even when it costs you everything, even when it breaks your heart." The silence stretched out like a held breath. Finally, someone asked, "What happened to Marcus?" Louis's eyes filled with tears, but he blinked them back. Professional athletes don't cry in front of cameras. Except sometimes, Louis thought. They do. "That's a long story," he said. "A story about bullying and bravery, about families who stick together when times get hard, about the kind of friendship that changes you forever, even when it has to end." He stood up from his chair. The interview wasn't supposed to be over yet, but Louis had said what he needed to say. For now. "Marcus, if you're watching this," Louis said, looking straight into the main camera, "I kept my promise. I never forgot you. And I never stopped believing in the lesson you taught me when we were kids." The reporters exploded with questions as Louis walked toward the door. "What lesson? What happened to Marcus? Is he still alive? Where is he now?" But Louis just smiled and waved. Some stories, he'd learned, need to be told slowly, like peeling an onion, one layer at a time. "I'll tell you the rest tomorrow," he called over his shoulder. "But I can promise you this. It's a story about the most important race I ever won, and it wasn't on any track you've ever heard of." The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving a room full of reporters with more questions than answers. And somewhere in London, a man named Marcus Chen sat in front of his television, tears streaming down his face, knowing that his oldest friend was finally ready to share their secret with the world. The secret that had shaped a champion. The secret that had broken two hearts and forged them back together stronger than before. The secret Lewis Hamilton had carried alone for 31 years. Stevenage, England. September 1993, 8-year-old Lewis Hamilton ran down Peartree Way as fast as his legs could carry him. His school bag bounced against his back with each step. His lunchbox rattled inside, and his math homework was probably getting crumpled. But he didn't care. He was late. Marcus would be waiting. Lewis's trainers slapped against the wet pavement as he turned the corner. The autumn air was cold, and his breath came out in little white puffs. Most of the houses on their street looked the same. Small, terraced homes with tiny front gardens and red brick walls. But Lewis knew every door, every gate, every crack in the sidewalk. This was his world. This was home. He slowed down as he reached number 47. The Chen family's house looked just like all the others, except for the small garden gnome Mrs. Chen had placed by the front steps. Marcus always said it looked like his grandfather back in Hong Kong. Louis knocked on the door 3 times, then 2 times, then 1 time. It was their secret code. The door opened, and Marcus Chen's round face appeared. His black hair stuck up in different directions, like he'd been lying down. His school uniform was wrinkled, and there was a small bandage on his chin. "You're late," Marcus said, but he was smiling. "Sorry, Mrs. Patterson kept us after class to talk about the spelling test." Louis stepped into the warm hallway. The house always smelled like the dumplings Mrs. Chen made on weekends. "What happened to your chin?" Marcus touched the bandage and looked away. "I fell off my bike." But Louis knew Marcus was lying. Marcus never fell off his bike. He was the best bike rider in their year. Plus, his bike had been in the front garden all week with a flat tire. "Really?" Louis asked. "Really," Marcus said quickly. "Come on, let's go to my room. I want to show you something." Marcus's bedroom was Louis's favorite place in the world. The walls were covered with pictures of race cars cut out from magazines. There were Formula One posters, toy cars lined up on shelves, and a big map of the world with red pins stuck in all the places that had racing tracks. Marcus had drawn a circle around Silverstone in England and written "Home Track" in his careful handwriting. "Look what I got," Marcus said, pulling a magazine from under his bed. It was the latest issue of F1 Racing magazine. On the cover was a shiny red Ferrari with a driver in a white helmet. Louis's eyes went wide. "Where did you get this?" "My dad bought it for me. He said maybe one day we'll see a race for real." The boys sat on Marcus's bed and turned the pages slowly. They looked at every picture, read every word they could understand. Louis pointed to a photo of drivers standing on a podium. "That's going to be us someday," he said. "Which one will you be?" Marcus asked. Louis thought for a moment. "The one in the middle, the winner." "What about me?" "You'll be right next to me. We'll be teammates." Marcus smiled, but it looked sad. "Do you really think so?" "Of course. We promised, remember? Best friends forever, racing together forever." They had made that promise last summer, sitting by the pond in Fairlands Valley Park. They had even shaken hands and spit in the water to make it official. "Louis," Marcus said quietly, "can I tell you something?" "Sure." Marcus looked at the bedroom door, then back at Louis. "Some kids at school, they say mean things to me." Louis felt his stomach get tight. "What kind of mean things?" "They say I don't belong here. They call me names because I look different. Yesterday, Tommy Miller pushed me in the hallway and said I should go back to China. 'But you're not from China. You're from Hong Kong.' I told him that, but he just laughed." Louis felt anger bubble up in his chest. Tommy Miller was in year 6, 2 years older than them. He was tall and mean and always picking on smaller kids. "That's not fair," Louis said. "You were born here, just like me." "I know, but I don't look like you. My eyes are different. My skin is different. My parents talk with an accent." Louis stared at his best friend. He had never thought about Marcus looking different. Marcus was just Marcus, the boy who shared his sweets, who helped him with math homework, who dreamed about racing cars. "Did you tell a teacher?" Louis asked. Marcus shook his head. "Tommy said if I told anyone, he'd make it worse. He said his older brother would come after me too." "That's not right, Marcus. We have to do something." "Like what?" "You're smaller than him too." Louis thought hard. His dad always said that bullies were just scared people who tried to make others feel small. But knowing that didn't make Tommy Miller any less scary. "I don't know yet," Louis said. "But we'll figure it out. We're best friends, right? Best friends. Stick together." Marcus looked at Louis with hope in his dark eyes. "Really? You'd help me even though Tommy might pick on you too?" "Of course I would. That's what friends do." They went back to looking at the racing magazine, but Louis couldn't focus on the pictures anymore. He kept thinking about Marcus being pushed, being called names. being made to feel like he didn't belong. Marcus belonged here more than anyone Louis knew. He was kind and smart and funny. He helped his parents at their shop after school. He shared everything he had. He was the best friend anyone could ask for. "Marcus," Louis said suddenly, "my dad is making me a go-kart in our garage. Maybe you could help?" "Really? You want me to help?" "Of course. We're going to be racing partners, remember? You should know how to build cars, too." For the first time that day, Marcus's smile looked real. "I'd like that a lot." "Good. Come over Saturday morning. Dad said we can start working on the engine. I'll ask my parents." Louis stood up to leave. As he reached the door, he turned back to Marcus. "Hey, Marcus?" "Yeah?" "Tomorrow at school, stay close to me, okay? If Tommy Miller tries anything, he'll have to deal with both of us." Marcus nodded. "Thanks, Louis. You're the best friend ever." As Louis walked home in the growing darkness, he made a promise to himself. He might be small, and he might be scared, but he wasn't going to let anyone hurt Marcus. Not Tommy Miller. Not anyone. Marcus was his best friend, his brother, his racing partner. And Lewis Hamilton never broke a promise. The streetlights flickered on as Louis reached his house. Through Marcus's window, he could see his friend still looking at the racing magazine. Neither boy knew that in just a few weeks, everything would change. That Marcus's secret was bigger than bullying. That their friendship would be tested in ways they couldn't imagine. That sometimes the hardest race to win is the one where you have to choose between your dreams and the people you love. But tonight, they were just two 8-year-old boys dreaming about racing cars and believing that friendship could conquer anything, even the secrets that hadn't been told yet. Louis burst through the front door of his small terraced house like a rocket. His keys clattered to the floor, and his school bag landed with a thud by the stairs. The smell of his stepmother's cooking filled the air, something with chicken and rice that made his stomach growl. "Dad!" Louis called out, his voice echoing through the narrow hallway. "Dad, I need to talk to you." From the kitchen came the sound of tools clinking and his father's voice humming an old song. Louis followed the noise and found Anthony Hamilton, sitting at the small wooden table surrounded by pieces of a broken radio. Tiny screws and wires were spread out like puzzle pieces. Anthony looked up with a smile. His work clothes were stained with oil, and his hands were dirty from fixing things all day. But his eyes were bright and kind, the way they always were, when Louis needed him. "What's got you so worked up, son?" Anthony asked, setting down his screwdriver. Louis plopped into the chair across from his father. The words tumbled out of his mouth like water from a broken dam. "Dad, there's this kid at school named Tommy Miller. He's in year 6, and he's being really mean to Marcus. He pushed Marcus and called him names and said he should go back to China. But Marcus isn't even from China. He's from Hong Kong, and that's different, right? And Marcus has a bandage on his chin, and I don't think he really fell off his bike, like he said. And Tommy threatened to get his older brother involved if Marcus tells anyone. And it's not fair, because Marcus is the nicest person in the whole world, and I don't know what to do. But I have to help him, because that's what best friends do." Louis finally stopped talking and took a big breath. Anthony had put down all his tools and was listening with the serious face he used when something was really important. "Slow down, Louis," Anthony said gently. "Tell me again, but this time, take your time." So Louis told the story again. More, slowly. He explained about Marcus being pushed, about the mean words, about how scared his best friend looked. As he talked, Anthony's face grew more serious. "That's not right," Anthony said firmly when Louis finished. No child should feel unsafe because of who they are or where their family comes from. Linda Hamilton appeared in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She had been listening from the next room. Her face looked worried and sad. "Poor Marcus," she said, sitting down next to Louis. "His parents must be so upset." "Do they know?" Anthony asked. Louis shook his head. "Marcus is too scared to tell them. He thinks it might make things worse." Anthony and Linda looked at each other. Louis could see them having one of those silent conversations that grown-ups sometimes had with just their eyes. "Dad," Louis said, "can we help Marcus? Please?" Anthony was quiet for a moment, thinking. Louis watched his father's face, hoping for the right answer. Anthony Hamilton had always been Louis's hero. He worked 2 jobs to pay for their house and food and Louis's go-kart parts. He was strong and smart and always knew what to do. "You know what, son?" Anthony said finally. "Yes, we can help, but we need to be smart about it." "What do you mean?" Louis asked. "Well, first, we need to talk to Marcus's parents. They should know what's happening. And second, we need to make sure Marcus knows he's not alone." Linda nodded. "Your father's right. When people stick together, bullies have less power." "You really think we can stop Tommy Miller?" Louis asked. Anthony reached across the table and put his hand on Louis's shoulder. "Louis, you and Marcus are good friends, right? Real friends?" "The best friends," Louis said proudly. "Then we stick together. Real friends don't let friends face trouble alone, and real families help other families when they need it." Louis felt a warm feeling spread through his chest. This was why he loved his dad so much. Anthony always knew how to make scary things feel manageable. "What should we do first?" Louis asked. "First, I'm going to call Mr. and Mrs. Chen. I'll explain what you told me and see how we can help." "What if they don't want our help?" Anthony smiled. "Son, when someone offers to help your child, you don't turn them away. Trust me on that." That evening, after dinner, Anthony made the phone call. Louis sat on the stairs, trying to hear the conversation through the kitchen door. He could only catch pieces. Anthony's voice saying words like community and together and not alone. The phone call lasted a long time. When Anthony finally hung up, he came to find Louis still sitting on the stairs. "How did it go?" Louis asked nervously. "Mr. Chen was very grateful," Anthony said. "He told me they've been worried about Marcus for weeks. They knew something was wrong, but Marcus wouldn't tell them what." "Are they mad at him for not telling?" "No, son. They're just sad that their boy was carrying this worry by himself. Just like I would be sad if you were scared and didn't tell me." Anthony sat down on the stairs next to Louis. "Mr. Chen told me something interesting. Did you know he used to work with race cars?" Louis's eyes went wide. "Really? Really? Back in Hong Kong, before Marcus was born, he was a mechanic for a racing team." "That's amazing. Does Marcus know?" "I don't think so. Mr. Chen said he stopped talking about it when they moved to England. He wanted to focus on building their new life here." Louis thought about this. Marcus loved racing just as much as he did. How could Mr. Chen not tell him about working with real race cars? "Dad, remember how you said we could start building my go-kart?" "Of course. Maybe Mr. Chen could help? Maybe Marcus could help too?" Anthony's face broke into a big smile. "You know what, Louis? I think that's a brilliant idea. A perfect way to bring our families together." "Really? You think he'd want to help?" "I think Mr. Chen would love to work on race cars again." And I think it would make Marcus very happy to build something with his best friend. Louis jumped up, excitement bubbling over. Can we ask them? Can we start this weekend? I'll call tomorrow and ask. But Louis, there's something else we need to talk about. Louis sat back down. Anthony's voice had gotten serious again. This go-kart project will be fun, and it will help bring our families together. But it won't solve the Tommy Miller problem by itself. What do you mean? I mean, you and Marcus still need to face this bully situation. Building a go-kart is great, but standing up for each other at school is just as important. Louis felt his stomach get tight again. I don't know if I'm brave enough, Dad. Tommy is so much bigger than us. Anthony put his arm around Louis's shoulders. Son, being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Being brave means you do the right thing even when you are scared. But what if he hurts us? That's why we stick together. That's why we tell the teachers. That's why Marcus's family and our family are going to support you both. Louis nodded slowly. He was still scared, but he felt less alone. Tomorrow, Anthony said, you're going to school with a plan. You're going to stay close to Marcus. You're going to be ready to get help if you need it. And you're going to remember that you're not just Louis Hamilton anymore. What do you mean? Anthony smiled. You're Louis Hamilton, part of a team. Marcus is your teammate. His parents and our family are your pit crew. And when you have a good team behind you, you can face anything. Louis liked the sound of that. A team, a pit crew, just like real race car drivers. Dad? Yes, son. Thanks for helping Marcus, even though he's not your kid. Anthony hugged Louis tight. Louis, when you care about someone, you care about the people they care about. Marcus matters to you, so he matters to us. That's how families work. That's how friendship works. As Louis got ready for bed that night, he felt something he hadn't felt since Marcus told him about the bullying. He felt hope. Tomorrow, he would go to school with a plan. He would stand by his best friend. And this weekend, they would start building a go-kart together. But most importantly, Marcus would know he wasn't alone anymore. Louis fell asleep thinking about race cars and friendship and the warm feeling of having people who cared about you. He didn't know that across town, Marcus was lying awake in his own bed, finally feeling brave enough to tell his parents the truth about Tommy Miller, or that sometimes the best plans start with simply refusing to let the people you love face their troubles alone. The next morning, Louis woke up before his alarm clock. Sunlight crept through his bedroom curtains, and he could hear birds chirping outside. But his stomach felt like it was full of jumping frogs. Today was the day. Today, he and Marcus would face Tommy Miller together. Louis got dressed slowly, putting on his school uniform and checking his reflection in the small mirror above his dresser. He looked the same as always, skinny, with wild hair that never stayed flat no matter how much his stepmother tried to comb it. But inside, he felt different. He felt like part of a team. Downstairs, Anthony was already awake, drinking tea and reading the morning paper. When he saw Louis, he folded the paper and smiled. "Ready for today, son?" "I think so," Louis said, though his voice wobbled a little. "Remember what we talked about. Stay close to Marcus, be smart, ask for help if you need it. What if Tommy doesn't? Listen, what if he gets angrier?" Anthony put down his teacup and looked Louis straight in the eyes. "Then you remember that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it." Louis nodded and grabbed his school bag. As he headed for the door, Anthony called after him. "Louis!" "Yeah, Dad? I'm proud of you already. No matter what happens today." Those words gave Louis the strength he needed. He walked to Marcus's house and knocked their secret code on the door. When Marcus answered, Louis could see something had changed. Marcus stood straighter. His eyes looked brighter. The sad, scared look from yesterday was gone. "I told them," Marcus said as soon as he saw Louis. "Told who what?" "My parents. About Tommy Miller. About everything." Louis felt relief wash over him. "What did they say?" my mom cried. But not because she was angry at me. She cried because she was sad I felt scared and alone. Marcus's voice got stronger. "And my dad told me something amazing." "What?" "He said our families are going to stick together. That's what your dad told him on the phone. And he said something else too." Marcus paused, looking excited. "He's going to help build your go-kart. He knows all about race cars, Louis. He used to work on them in Hong Kong." Louis grinned. "That's brilliant. We're going to have the best go-kart in all of Stevenage." The two boys walked to school together, talking about go-karts and racing. But as they got closer to Fairlands Primary School, Louis felt the frogs in his stomach start jumping again. "What if Tommy tries something today?" Louis asked. "Then we face it together," Marcus said firmly. "Like you said yesterday, best friends stick together." The morning passed normally. In math class, Mrs. Patterson taught them about fractions. In English, they read stories about adventures. Louis and Marcus sat next to each other, whispering about their go-kart plans when the teacher wasn't looking. But at lunchtime, everything changed. Louis and Marcus were walking toward their usual spot by the football field when they heard a loud voice behind them. "Well, well, look who it is." They turned around. Tommy Miller was walking toward them with 3 of his friends. All of them were bigger and older. Tommy had messy brown hair and a mean smile that made Louis's skin crawl. "It's the Chinese boy." "And his little friend," Tommy sneered. Marcus took a step back, but Louis stepped forward. "Leave him alone, Tommy," Louis said. His voice was shaking, but he tried to sound brave. Tommy laughed. "What are you going to do about it, Hamilton? You're just as small as he is." "Maybe I'm small," Louis said, "but I'm not alone." "What's that supposed to mean?" Louis looked around the playground. Other kids were watching now. Some of them looked uncomfortable. Some looked scared. But they were all listening. "It means Marcus is my best friend," Louis said, louder this time. "And friends protect friends." Tommy's smile got nastier. "Nobody cares about your stupid friendship. Why don't you tell your Chinese friend to go back where he came from?" "He comes from here," Louis shouted. "Just like you. Just like me." "No, he doesn't. Look at him. He's different." Louis felt anger burn in his chest. "So, what if he looks different? Marcus is the smartest kid in our year. He's kind and funny, and he shares his sweets with everyone. He helps people with their homework. He's a better person than you'll ever be." Tommy's face turned red. "Shut up, Hamilton." "No," Louis said. "I won't shut up. Marcus belongs here as much as anyone. And I'm not going to let you make him feel bad about who he is." Something magical happened then. Sarah Johnson, a girl from their class, stepped forward. "Louis is right," she said clearly. "Tommy, you're being mean for no reason." Then Jamie Roberts joined them. "Yeah, Marcus helped me with my math yesterday when I was confused." One by one, more kids started speaking up. "Marcus always shares his football at break time. He helped me when I fell down last week. He's really good at drawing. He taught me how to draw cars." Soon, there was a circle of kids around Louis and Marcus. Not a scary circle like Tommy's gang, but a protective one. A circle of friends. Tommy looked around, realizing he was outnumbered. His friends started backing away. "This is stupid," Tommy muttered. "No," Louis said firmly. "What's stupid is picking on people because they're different. What's stupid is trying to make someone feel bad about their family or where they come from." Louis felt braver with each word. "My dad told me something last night. He said that when people stick together, bullies lose their power." I think he was right. Tommy's face was very red now. He looked angry and embarrassed. "Whatever," he said finally. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," said a voice from behind them. Everyone turned. Mrs. Patterson was standing there with her hands on her hips. She had been watching the whole thing. "Tommy, Miller, come with me right now. We need to have a talk with the headmaster." As Tommy walked away with Mrs. Patterson, the circle of kids around Louis and Marcus started to break up. But before they left, many of them came over to say something. "That was really brave, Louis. Good for you for standing up to him. Marcus, I'm sorry Tommy was mean to you." When it was just Louis and Marcus again, they sat down on the grass. Marcus had tears in his eyes, but he was smiling. "I can't believe you did that," Marcus said. "We did that," Louis corrected. "We did it together." "I was so scared. But when you started talking, I felt brave too." Louis grinned. "That's what best friends do. They make each other brave." "Do you think Tommy will leave me alone now?" "I think." Tommy learned something today. He learned that you're not alone. And bullies don't like it when their targets have friends. Marcus wiped his eyes. "Louis?" "Yeah?" "Thanks for being my friend. Thanks for not caring that I look different." Louis looked at Marcus with surprise. "You don't look different to me. You just look like Marcus, my best friend Marcus." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the other kids play football. "You know what?" Marcus said finally. "What?" "I can't wait to build that go-kart with you. I think it's going to be amazing." "The best go-kart ever," Louis agreed. "And when we're famous race car drivers someday, we'll remember this day." "Why?" Marcus smiled. "Because this was the day we learned that standing up for what's right is more important than being scared." Louis nodded. "And the day we learned that real friends never let each other face trouble alone." As they walked back toward school, Louis felt proud. Not because he had been brave, but because he had been a good friend. Because he had stood up for someone who needed help. Because he had learned that sometimes the most important victories happen off the racetrack. He didn't know it yet, but this moment would stay with him forever. Years later, when he faced prejudice and challenges in his own racing career, he would remember the 8-year-old boy who refused to let his best friend be bullied. He would remember that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right, even when you're afraid. And sometimes, that's the most important lesson of all. Saturday morning came with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. Louis had barely slept the night before, too excited about starting the go-kart project. He wolfed down his breakfast of toast and jam while Anthony packed tools into a worn canvas bag. "Slow down, son," Anthony laughed. "The garage isn't going anywhere." But Louis couldn't slow down. Today felt special. Today, he and Marcus would start building something together. Something real. At exactly 9 o'clock, Louis heard the familiar knock on their front door. 3 knocks, 2 knocks, 1 knock. Marcus had arrived. But when Louis opened the door, he got a surprise. Marcus wasn't alone. Behind him stood a man Louis had only seen from a distance before, Mr. Chen, Marcus's father. Mr. Chen was shorter than Anthony, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He carried a metal toolbox that looked old but well cared for. When he smiled at Louis, his whole face lit up. "Good morning, Louis," Mr. Chen said. His voice had a gentle accent that made Louis think of far-away places. "Thank you for inviting us to work on your go-kart." "Thank you for helping us, Mr. Chen," Louis replied politely. Anthony appeared behind Louis, wiping his hands on a rag. "David, good to see you again." The two fathers shook hands warmly. Louis was surprised to hear Mr. Chen's first name. Somehow, it made him seem more real, more like a person instead of just Marcus's dad. "I brought some tools," Mr. Chen said, lifting his toolbox. "Some of them might be useful for your project." "Excellent. Come on, let's get started." They all walked through the narrow hallway to the back of the house, where Anthony had set up a workspace in the small garage. The space smelled like motor oil and metal. Pieces of what would become Louis's go-kart were spread out on a workbench. Tubes of steel, wheels, bolts, and a small engine that Anthony had been rebuilding. Marcus's eyes went wide. "It's going to be amazing, Louis." Mr. Chen walked slowly around the workbench, examining each piece with the careful attention of someone who really knew what he was looking at. He picked up a wrench, felt its weight in his hands, then set it down gently. "This is good work, Anthony," he said quietly. "Very good quality parts. Thanks. I've been collecting them for months. Want to make sure Louis's first kart is built right." Mr. Chen nodded. "The foundation is everything. If the basics are wrong, nothing else matters." As they began working, Louis noticed something magical happening. His father and Mr. Chen fell into an easy rhythm, like they had been building things together for years. Anthony would hold a piece in place while Mr. Chen marked where to drill. Mr. Chen would suggest a better way to attach something, and Anthony would nod and make the change. Louis and Marcus mostly watched, asking questions and handing over tools when needed. But watching was almost as exciting as doing. This was how real things got built. This was how dreams became reality. After about an hour of work, Mrs. Chen appeared with a thermos of tea and a plate of homemade biscuits. She smiled at the boys and set everything on a small table near the garage door. "How is the work going?" she asked. "Very well," Anthony said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Your husband knows a lot about building race cars." Mrs. Chen looked at her husband with a strange expression, part pride, part sadness. "Yes, he does." Mr. Chen stopped what he was doing and looked at his wife. They seemed to have one of those silent conversations that grown-ups sometimes had with their eyes. "Boys," Mr. Chen said finally, "would you like to see something?" Louis and Marcus nodded eagerly. "Wait here." Mr. Chen left the garage and returned a few minutes later carrying a large cardboard box. He set it down carefully on the workbench and opened it slowly, like he was unwrapping something precious. Inside were photographs. Lots of them. Mr. Chen picked up the first photo and showed it to the boys. It was a picture of him, but younger, wearing blue coveralls and standing next to a bright red race car. He was smiling and holding a wrench, and behind him, Louis could see other men working on more race cars. "This was taken in Hong Kong," Mr. Chen said quietly. 1987. I was a mechanic for a Formula 3 racing team. Louis stared at the photo. "That's really you?" "Really me?" Marcus looked amazed. "Dad, you never told me you worked on race cars." Mr. Chen picked up another photo. This one showed him working under the hood of a car, his hands deep in the engine. "This was my job for 3 years. We traveled all over Asia for races. Hong Kong, Malaysia, Japan, Singapore." "That's incredible," Louis breathed. "What was it like?" Mr. Chen's eyes got a faraway look. It was the best job I ever had. Every day was different. Every race was a new challenge. The cars were beautiful, powerful machines. And when our driver won, he smiled. When our driver won, it felt like we had all won together. Anthony leaned against the workbench. "What made you stop?" Mr. Chen looked at his wife, then at Marcus. "We wanted to start a family. Racing is exciting, but it means traveling all the time. No stability, no good place to raise children. So we decided to come to England and build a different kind of life." "But you kept the photos," Marcus said. "And these," Mr. Chen said, reaching into the box. He pulled out a smaller box filled with tools. But these weren't ordinary tools like the ones Lewis's dad used. These were special racing tools, precise, beautiful, made for working on the most advanced cars in the world. Mr. Chen picked up a small wrench with a perfect chrome finish. "This is for adjusting carburetors on racing engines. And this," he held up another tool, "is for measuring tire pressure to exactly the right level." Lewis ran his finger along the smooth metal. The tools felt different from regular tools. Lighter, more precise, like they were made for important work. "Why didn't you ever tell us about this?" Marcus asked his father. Mr. Chen was quiet for a moment. "When we moved to England, I thought it was better to focus on the future, not the past. We had a new life to build, a shop to run, a family to raise." "But racing was your dream," Lewis said. "Yes, but sometimes we put our dreams aside for more important things." Anthony cleared his throat. "David, what if you didn't have to put them aside? What if you could have both?" Mr. Chen looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if working on Lewis's go-kart was a way to get back into racing? Not professionally, but for fun, for the love of it." Mr. Chen looked at the go-kart parts, then at the photos, then at his racing tools. "Could we really build something special?" he asked quietly. "We could build the best go-kart in Stevenage," Anthony said. "Maybe in all of Hertfordshire." Lewis felt excitement bubble up in his chest. "Really? With real racing techniques?" "Why not?" Mr. Chen said, and suddenly his voice was stronger, more confident. "If we're going to build a go-kart, we should build it properly." Marcus grabbed Lewis's arm. "This is going to be amazing. My dad knows secrets about making cars go fast." Mr. Chen picked up his special racing tools. "These have been sitting in a box for 6 years. Maybe it's time they were used again." As the morning turned into afternoon, the small garage became filled with the sounds of building and laughter. Mr. Chen showed them how to measure things with perfect precision. Anthony taught them about engines and safety. Lewis and Marcus learned how to hold tools properly and follow instructions. But most importantly, Lewis watched Mr. Chen come alive. With each passing hour, Marcus's father seemed to stand taller, smile more, speak with greater confidence. He was remembering who he used to be. "You know," Mr. Chen said, as they attached the first wheel, "there is something special about building something with your hands, something that will go fast and be beautiful and make people happy." "Is that why you loved racing?" Lewis asked. "Part of it, but the best part was working with a team, people who shared the same dream, who wanted to create something amazing together." Marcus looked at Lewis, then at their fathers. "Like us?" "Exactly like us," Mr. Chen said with a smile. As the sun began to set, they covered the half-built go-kart with an old sheet. It didn't look like much yet, just some metal tubes and wheels. But Lewis could already imagine it finished, painted bright colors, racing around a track. "Next Saturday?" Anthony asked. "Next Saturday," Mr. Chen agreed. And boys, this week, maybe you should start thinking about what color you want to paint it. As the Chen family prepared to leave, Mr. Chen packed his racing tools back into their box. But this time, he didn't look sad. He looked excited. "Louis," he said, "thank you for giving me a reason to use these tools again. Thank you for sharing your secrets with us, Mr. Chen." That night, as Louis lay in bed, he thought about the photos, and the racing tools, and the way Mr. Chen's face had changed throughout the day. He was beginning to understand that grown-ups had dreams too, and that sometimes those dreams got put away but never really disappeared. He was also beginning to understand that the best projects weren't just about building things. They were about building friendships, building trust, and building bridges between different worlds. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, they were about helping someone remember who they used to be and who they still could be. The next few Saturdays became the best days of Louis's life. Every weekend, the Hamilton garage filled with the sounds of building, learning, and laughter. What had started as a simple go-kart project had become something much bigger. A bridge between two families and two cultures. Mr. Chen arrived each Saturday morning with his box of racing tools and a thermos of Mrs. Chen's special tea. He had begun wearing his old racing team jacket, faded blue with patches from different circuits around Asia. When he put it on, he looked like a different person. Taller, more confident, more alive. "Today we work on the steering," Mr. Chen announced one Saturday, spreading technical drawings across the workbench. The drawings were covered with measurements and notes written in his careful handwriting. Louis and Marcus crowded around to look. The drawings showed the go-kart from every angle, with lines and numbers that looked like a real engineering blueprint. "You drew all this?" Louis asked, amazed. "Racing is not just about driving fast," Mr. Chen explained. "It's about understanding every part of the machine. In Hong Kong, I learned that precision in building leads to precision in performance." Anthony watched his friend work with obvious respect. "David, this is professional-level stuff. Louis's kart is going to be better than anything else on the track." "That's the idea," Mr. Chen said with a smile. "If we're going to build something, we build it right." Over the weeks, Louis learned more than just how to use tools. He learned about patience, about measuring twice and cutting once, about the satisfaction of seeing something grow from an idea into reality. Mr. Chen taught them that every bolt mattered. Every measurement had to be perfect. Every part had to work with every other part. "In racing," he would say, "there are no small details. Everything is important." Marcus blossomed under his father's attention. Louis watched his best friend discover a side of himself he'd never known existed. Marcus had inherited his father's careful hands and eye for precision. When Mr. Chen showed them how to adjust the brake cables, Marcus understood immediately. When they balanced the wheels, Marcus could feel when something was even slightly off. "You have good instincts," Mr. Chen told his son one afternoon. "Like a natural engineer." Marcus beamed with pride. Louis had never seen his friend look so happy. The garage became more than just a workshop. It became a gathering place for both families. Mrs. Chen would arrive on Saturday afternoons with homemade dumplings or sweet buns. Linda would make sandwiches and tea. The adults would sit on folding chairs, watching the boys work and sharing stories about their own childhoods. "In Jamaica, where I grew up," Anthony told them one day, "my father and I used to fix old cars together. Nothing fancy, just keeping them running. But those were some of my best memories." "Cars bring people together," Mr. Chen agreed. "Doesn't matter where you're from or what language you speak. Everyone understands the beauty of something that goes fast. Other neighbors began stopping by to see what was happening in the Hamilton garage. Mrs. Johnson from next door brought her son, Tommy, not the bully, a different Tommy, to watch them work. Mr. Williams from across the street offered to help paint the cart when it was ready. "Word's getting around," Anthony told Louis one evening. "People are excited about what we're building here. It's not just a go-kart anymore. Is it, Dad?" "No, son. It's become something that brings the whole neighborhood together." As the weeks passed, the go-kart took shape. The frame was painted bright yellow, Louis's choice because it was the color of sunshine and happiness. The seat was covered in black padding that Mr. Chen had found at a motorcycle shop. The engine, rebuilt by Anthony with Mr. Chen's racing knowledge, purrs like a contented cat. But the most special part was the steering wheel. Mr. Chen had brought it from his box of racing memories, a real racing steering wheel from one of the Formula 3 cars he had worked on in Hong Kong. "Are you sure?" Louis asked when Mr. Chen offered it. "This must be really important to you." Mr. Chen picked up the steering wheel, running his fingers along its worn leather grip. "This wheel helped win many races, but it's been sitting in a box for 6 years, not helping anyone. It should be used by someone who will appreciate it. But what if I crash? What if I break it?" "Louis," Mr. Chen said gently, "this wheel was made to be used in races. It was made to help drivers go fast and be safe. That's its purpose. Keeping it in a box forever would be like keeping a bird in a cage." Louis took the steering wheel carefully, feeling its weight. It was heavier than he expected, and the leather was soft from years of use. When he held it, he could almost imagine the drivers who had gripped it before him, racing around tracks in Malaysia and Japan and Singapore. "Thank you, Mr. Chen. I promise I'll take good care of it." "I know you will. And Louis, when you're driving, remember what this wheel has taught many drivers before you. Racing is not just about winning. It's about respecting the machine, respecting your competitors, and always pushing yourself to be better." The final Saturday before the cart would be finished was special. Both families worked together to attach the last pieces. The number plates. Louis had chosen number 44 because it was his lucky number. The safety equipment, and the final adjustments to the engine. As they worked, Mr. Chen told stories about the races he had been part of. He described the excitement of race day, the sound of engines starting, the smell of fuel and rubber, the feeling of watching a car you had helped build cross the finish line first. The best part, he said, was not the winning. The best part was knowing that your work, your care, your attention to detail had helped someone achieve their dream. Marcus looked up from the bolt he was tightening. "Is that why you're helping us, Dad? To help Louis achieve his dream?" Mr. Chen smiled. "Partly, but also because working on this cart has helped me remember my own dreams. Sometimes we need to help others before we can help ourselves." As the sun began to set, they stepped back to admire their work. The go-kart was beautiful, yellow and black, sleek and purposeful, looking fast even when it was standing still. Louis sat in the driver's seat for the first time with all the pieces in place. His hands gripped the racing steering wheel. His feet reached the pedals perfectly. Everything felt right. "How does it feel?" Anthony asked. "Like it was made for me," Louis said softly. "It was," Mr. Chen said. "We built it specifically for you, with your size, your weight, your driving style in mind. This is not just any go-kart. This is Lewis Hamilton's go-kart." Marcus ran his hand along the side of the cart. "It's perfect. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "You helped build it," Louis reminded his friend. "This is our go-kart." That evening, as they covered the finished cart with its protective sheet, Mr. Chen made an announcement. Next weekend, we test it. But not just anywhere. I've called my old friend Jimmy at Rye House Kart Circuit. He's agreed to let us use the track for a few hours. Lewis's eyes went wide. A real racing track. A real racing track. It's time to see what we've built together. As the Chen family prepared to leave, Mrs. Chen hugged Lewis tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For giving my husband back his smile. For showing Marcus that he can build beautiful things with his hands. For bringing our families together." That night, Lewis could hardly sleep. Tomorrow, he would drive on a real racing track for the first time. But more than that, he would be driving something that had been built with love, skill, and the dreams of two families. He thought about Mr. Chen's racing stories, about the steering wheel that had helped other drivers win races, about the patient hours they had all spent together in the garage. He was beginning to understand that the best victories were the ones you shared with the people you loved. And sometimes, the most important thing you could build wasn't a machine at all. It was trust, friendship, and the bridge between who you used to be and who you were becoming. The morning of the track test dawned gray and cold. Lewis woke up before sunrise, his stomach dancing with a mixture of excitement and nerves. Today wasn't just about testing the go-kart they had built together. Today was about finding out if all their hard work, all Mr. Chen's racing knowledge, and all of Lewis's dreams could come together on a real racing track. Anthony loaded the go-kart into their small trailer, while Lewis sat in the passenger seat, bouncing his legs nervously. Through the car window, he could see the cart secured with straps, its yellow paint gleaming even in the dim morning light. "Nervous?" Anthony asked, as they drove through the quiet streets of Stevenage. "A little," Lewis admitted. "What if I'm not good at it? What if I crash? What if the cart doesn't work right?" "Then we learn from it and try again," Anthony said simply. That's what racing is about. Learning, improving, never giving up. The Chen family met them at Rye House Kart Circuit in their small van. Marcus had dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept much either. But his face was bright with excitement. "Today's the day!" Marcus called out as they arrived. Lewis looked around the track with wide eyes. He had seen racing on television, but being here in person was completely different. The smell of fuel and rubber hung in the air. The track stretched out in front of them, smooth black tarmac with white lines marking the racing path. There were corners that curved left and right, long straight sections where carts could go really fast, and tire barriers to keep drivers safe. Other families were already there with their carts. Lewis could see boys and girls his age, some older, some younger, all wearing racing suits and helmets. Their carts looked professional and expensive. Some had teams of mechanics working on them. Lewis suddenly felt very small and out of place. "Look at all these fancy carts," he whispered to Marcus. The other carts had shiny bodywork, sponsor stickers, and teams of adults fussing over every detail. Some had special racing tires that cost more than Lewis's entire cart. Lewis's yellow go-kart looked simple and homemade by comparison. Mr. Chen must have seen the worry on Lewis's face. He put a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Lewis, do you remember what I taught you about racing in Hong Kong?" "Which part?" "The most important part. It's not about having the fanciest equipment. It's about the heart of the driver and the quality of the work that went into building the machine." "But their carts look so much better than ours." "Their carts look more expensive," Mr. Chen corrected. "That's not the same thing. We built your cart with precision, with care, with love. Every bolt was tightened correctly. Every measurement was exact. Every part was chosen for the right reasons. Marcus joined the conversation. Plus, Dad put real racing secrets into our kart. Things those other teams probably don't know. Mr. Chen smiled. Marcus is right. This kart may look simple, but it has 30 years of racing knowledge built into it. They unloaded the kart and began preparing for the track session. Mr. Chen had brought a small toolkit with his special racing tools. Anthony helped Lewis into his racing suit, a bright blue, one-piece outfit that made him feel like a real racing driver. The helmet was the most important part. It was white with a small Union Jack sticker that Marcus had insisted they add. When Lewis put it on, the world became quieter, more focused. Through the helmet's visor, everything looked more serious. "How does it feel?" Anthony asked. "Like I'm really a racing driver," Lewis said, his voice muffled by the helmet. During the practice session, Lewis drove slowly, learning the track. The go-kart felt different from anything he had ever experienced. It was low to the ground, so everything seemed to move very fast. The steering was precise. When he turned the wheel even a little bit, the kart responded immediately. But Lewis was cautious. Maybe too cautious. Other drivers were going much faster, zooming past him on the straights and diving into corners with confidence Lewis didn't feel yet. After 15 minutes, Lewis came into the pits, feeling disappointed. "I'm not fast enough," he told Mr. Chen and Anthony. "Everyone else is going so much faster." Mr. Chen knelt down next to the cart. "Tell me what you're feeling out there." "Scared, I guess. The cart wants to go fast, but I'm afraid I'll lose control." "Good," Mr. Chen said, surprising Lewis. "Good. Fear keeps you safe. But Lewis, there's a difference between being careful and being afraid. Careful means you respect the speed and the danger. Afraid means you don't trust yourself or your machine." Anthony joined the conversation. "Son, do you trust the kart we built?" Lewis thought about all the hours they had spent in the garage, all the careful measurements, all the attention to detail. "Yes." "Do you trust Mr. Chen's racing knowledge?" "Yes." "Then trust yourself. Trust your instincts. The kart will do what you tell it to do, but you have to be clear about what you want." Marcus had been watching from the fence. Now he ran over with excitement. "Lewis, I was timing you with Dad's stopwatch. On your last lap, you were really fast. Through the corners. You're just going slow on the straight parts." "Really? Really?" "Dad, show him the times." Mr. Chen looked at his notebook. "Marcus is right. Your corner speeds are very good. You're taking the racing line correctly, braking at the right points. You just need to trust the kart on the straights." "Remember what I taught you about the racing line?" Mr. Chen continued. "Wide into the corner, hit the apex, wide on the exit. You're doing that perfectly. Now you just need to use all the power the engine can give you." For the final session of the day, Lewis felt different. Instead of thinking about all the things that could go wrong, he thought about all the things they had done right. The careful building, the precise adjustments, the racing steering wheel that had helped other drivers win. He took a deep breath and pressed the accelerator harder. The kart responded immediately, shooting forward with surprising speed. Lewis felt the engine's power pushing him back in his seat. The wind rushed past his helmet. The world became a blur of speed and focus. On the first corner, instead of slowing down too much, Lewis trusted what Mr. Chen had taught him. He braked later, turned in at exactly the right moment, and accelerated out of the corner faster than he had ever gone before. Lap after lap, Lewis got more confident. He began to understand what Mr. Chen meant about trusting the machine. The cart wanted to go fast. It had been built to go fast. Lewis just had to let it do what it was designed to do. On his best lap, Lewis passed 3 other drivers. He took corners that had scared him earlier with smooth confidence. He used every bit of the track, hitting the racing line perfectly lap after lap. When he finally came into the pits, his family was cheering. "That was incredible!" Marcus shouted. Anthony looked at his stopwatch with amazement. "Lewis, do you know what you just did?" "What?" "Your fastest lap was quicker than boys, who have been racing for 2 years. And you did it in a homemade cart." Mr. Chen was smiling so wide, it looked like his face might crack. "Lewis, that was beautiful driving. You found the speed, but more importantly, you found the control." "Really? I was fast?" "You were flying," Marcus said. I could hear the other parents talking. They kept asking who the new kid in the yellow cart was. As they packed up the cart, Lewis felt something he had never felt before. It wasn't just happiness or excitement. It was a deep satisfaction, like he had discovered something important about himself. "Dad," Lewis said as they loaded the cart back into the trailer, "I think I want to race. Really race." Anthony and Mr. Chen looked at each other. "That means competitions," Anthony said. "Other tracks, more serious training." "I know. And I know it will cost money we don't have much of. But Dad, when I was out there today, everything felt right. Like this is what I'm supposed to be doing." Mr. Chen put his tools away carefully. "Lewis, racing is not just about being fast. It's about dedication, hard work, and never giving up when things get difficult. Are you ready for that?" Lewis thought about the bullying they had faced together, about the weeks of patient building in the garage, about learning to trust himself and his friends. "Yes," he said firmly, "I'm ready." As they drove home in the fading daylight, Lewis watched the countryside pass by through the car window. He was already thinking about the next race, the next track, the next challenge. He didn't know that this was the day his racing career truly began. He didn't know that the yellow go-kart, built in a small garage in Stevenage, would be the first step on a journey that would take him around the world. But he did know that he had found something special, something that combined the technical knowledge Mr. Chen had shared, the determination his father had taught him, and the loyalty Marcus had shown him. He had found his calling, and it felt like coming home. 3 years later, 1996, 11-year-old Lewis Hamilton stood in the winner's circle at Buckmore Park Kart Circuit, holding a shiny trophy above his head. The crowd cheered, cameras flashed, and other drivers patted him on the back. He had just won his 4th race of the season, and talent scouts were starting to take notice. But as Lewis smiled for the photographers, his eyes searched the crowd for one face in particular. Marcus wasn't there. Again. After the ceremony, Lewis found Anthony packing their equipment into the trailer. The yellow go-kart they had built together 3 years ago had been replaced by a sleek new racing cart with sponsor stickers and professional parts. Everything looked more serious now, more expensive. "Good race, son," Anthony said, but he looked tired. Working extra shifts to pay for Lewis's racing was taking its toll. "Thanks, Dad. I wish Marcus could have been here to see it." Anthony paused, in his packing. "Lewis, you know the Chens wanted to come, but Saturday is their busiest day at the shop. They can't afford to close it." Lewis nodded, but he felt disappointed anyway. Racing victories didn't feel as exciting when you couldn't share them with your best friend. The drive home to Stevenage was quiet. Lewis stared out the window at the countryside rushing past, thinking about how different things had become. 3 years ago, every race day had been a family adventure with both the Hamiltons and the Chens. Now, racing had become Lewis's world, and Marcus felt further away each week. When they arrived home, Louis knocked on Marcus's door with their old secret. Code: 3 knocks, 2 knocks, 1 knock. But when Marcus answered, something felt different. His best friend looked older, more serious, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "How was the race?" Marcus asked, but his voice sounded flat. "I won," Louis said, trying to sound excited. "First place again." "That's great," Marcus replied, but he didn't sound like he meant it. They went up to Marcus's room, which had changed too. The racing posters were still on the walls, but they were faded now. Marcus's desk was covered with homework and books instead of racing magazines. The toy cars on his shelves were dusty. "I saved you some cake from the victory celebration," Louis said, pulling a piece wrapped in napkin from his pocket. "Thanks," Marcus said, but he just set it aside without eating it. Louis felt confused and hurt. "Marcus, what's wrong? You seem different." Marcus sat on his bed and looked at his hands. "Louis, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever think about anything besides racing anymore?" The question caught Louis off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we used to talk about lots of things. School, football, movies, books. Now, every time we talk, it's about your races, your trophies, your sponsors. It's like racing is the only thing that matters to you." Louis felt defensive. "Racing is important to me. You know that." "I know. But what about other things? What about our friendship?" "You're still my best friend, Marcus. Nothing has changed." But even as Louis said it, he knew it wasn't completely true. Things had changed. Louis spent most weekends at racetracks now. During the week, he had special training sessions and meetings with sponsors. He was making new friends in the racing world. Other young drivers who understood the pressure and excitement of competition. Marcus seemed to sense Louis's uncertainty. "When was the last time we just hung out, just played football in the park, or rode our bikes around the neighborhood?" Louis thought about it. He couldn't remember. "And when was the last time you asked me about school, or my family, or what I've been doing while you're at races?" Louis felt his stomach sink. He couldn't remember that either. "Louis, I'm happy for your success. Really, I am. But sometimes I feel like I'm not part of your life anymore. Like I'm just someone you visit when you're not busy with racing." "That's not true," Louis said, but his voice was weak. "Isn't it? You have a whole world now that I'm not part of. Famous drivers know your name. You travel to different tracks every weekend. You have sponsors and managers and people who think you're special." Marcus's voice got quieter. "And I'm just Marcus Chen from Stevenage. I work in my parents' shop on weekends. I help them count money and stock shelves while you're winning trophies." Louis didn't know what to say. He had never thought about how his racing success might make Marcus feel left out. "I want to be happy for you," Marcus continued. "But it's hard when it feels like your success is taking you away from everyone who knew you before you were famous." "I'm not famous," Louis protested. "Yes, you are. At least in the racing world. People know your name. They expect you to win. You're becoming someone important." Marcus stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the street where they used to play together. "My parents are proud of me for helping with the shop. They say I'm responsible and hardworking. But Louis, sometimes I watch your races on TV, and I remember when we used to dream about racing together. When we thought we'd be teammates someday." Louis felt tears starting in his eyes. "We can still be teammates when we're older, when we both get to Formula One." Marcus turned around with a sad smile. "Louis, I'm never going to be in Formula One. I don't have your talent, I don't have your speed, and my family doesn't have money for racing. But you helped build my first kart. You understand racing. Understanding racing and being able to do it are different things. You have a gift, Lewis, a real gift. But that gift is taking you places I can't follow. The room fell silent. Lewis could hear the clock ticking on Marcus's desk and the sound of cars passing on the street outside. "So what does this mean?" Lewis asked quietly. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "I still want to be your friend. But I also need to figure out who I am when I'm not just Lewis Hamilton's best friend from before he was famous." Lewis felt panic rising in his chest. "Are you saying you don't want to be friends anymore?" "No, I'm saying that maybe our friendship needs to change. Maybe you need to focus on your racing, and I need to focus on my own life. But I don't want things to change." Marcus looked at him with understanding, but also sadness. "Lewis, things have already changed. You're not the same person you were 3 years ago, and neither am I." Lewis wanted to argue, to prove that nothing had changed. But deep down, he knew Marcus was right. Racing had become the center of his world. Everything else, school, friends, even family time, came second to the next race, the next trophy, the next opportunity. "I never meant for this to happen," Lewis said. "I know you didn't, and I'm not angry at you. I'm proud of you. But Lewis, as you get more successful, this is only going to get harder. You're going to travel more, train more, be away more. And I'm going to be here in Stevenage, living a normal life." Lewis sat, quietly, trying to understand what Marcus was telling him. "What should I do?" Lewis asked finally. "Follow your dreams," Marcus said simply. "Become the racing driver you're meant to be. Win championships. Make history." "But Lewis?" "Yeah? Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget the people who believed in you before the world knew your name. And don't let success change who you are inside." As Lewis walked home that evening, he felt confused and sad. Racing was his passion, his calling, his future, but it was also changing everything about his life, including his most important friendship. He didn't know that this conversation with Marcus was preparing him for one of the hardest lessons in life, that following your dreams sometimes means leaving people behind, even when you don't want to. He didn't know that success would bring new challenges he had never imagined. But he was beginning to understand that growing up meant making difficult choices, and that sometimes the people who love you most are the ones who have to let you go, so you can become who you're meant to be, even when it breaks everyone's heart. Summer 1997, Lewis Hamilton stood at his bedroom window, watching the rain streak down the glass. At 12 years old, he was already being called a racing prodigy. The McLaren Young Driver program had noticed him. There was talk of sponsorship deals, professional training, maybe even a path to Formula One. But none of that felt important right now. Tomorrow was the Hertfordshire Youth Karting Championship, the biggest race of the year for young drivers in their region. Lewis had been preparing for months. His lap times were the fastest in practice. Everyone expected him to win. The problem was Marcus. They hadn't spoken properly in 3 weeks, not since their conversation about their changing friendship. Lewis had tried calling several times, but Marcus was always busy helping at the shop or doing homework. When they passed each other at school, Marcus would smile and wave, but it felt polite rather than real. Lewis missed his best friend more than he had ever missed anything. A knock on his bedroom door interrupted his thoughts. Anthony came in looking concerned. "Son, you should be excited about tomorrow. This is the biggest race of your career so far, but you look like someone canceled Christmas." Lewis turned away from the window. Dad, do you think I'm becoming a different person? Anthony sat down on Louis's bed. What do you mean? Marcus thinks racing is changing me, that I only care about winning now, not about the people who were with me from the beginning. And what do you think? Louis thought about it honestly. I think maybe he's right. I love racing more than anything, but I also love Marcus, and I feel like I have to choose between them. Anthony was quiet for a moment. Louis, can I tell you something about following your dreams? Okay. Sometimes, when you're really good at something, when you have a special gift, it requires sacrifices. Not just from you, but from the people who love you too. What kind of sacrifices? Time, attention, shared experiences, the things that friendships are built on. Anthony looked sad. I've watched you become more focused, more dedicated, more professional. Those are good things for a racing driver, but they can be hard things for a 12-year-old boy. Louis felt tears starting in his eyes. I don't want to lose Marcus. I know you don't. But Louis, real friendship isn't about spending every moment together. Real friendship is about supporting each other's dreams, even when those dreams take you in different directions. But what if Marcus doesn't want to support my dreams anymore? Why don't you ask him? That evening, Louis walked to the Chen family shop. The open sign was still lit, and through the window he could see Marcus behind the counter, helping a customer. Louis waited outside until the customer left, then took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The bell above the door chimed, and Marcus looked up. For a moment, neither boy said anything. Hi, Louis said finally. Hi, Marcus replied. Can we talk? Marcus looked around the empty shop, then nodded. Mom's in the back. We can talk here. Louis walked to the counter where Marcus was sorting receipt papers. The shop smelled like the dumplings Mrs. Chen made for their hot food section, mixed with the scent of newspapers and cleaning products. Marcus, I've been thinking about what you said, about how racing is changing me. Marcus stopped sorting receipts. Louis, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. You didn't hurt my feelings. You told me the truth. And you were right. Marcus looked surprised. I have been different, Louis continued. I think about racing all the time. I talk about it too much. I've been so focused on winning that I forgot about the people who helped me get started. Louis, let me finish. Tomorrow is the big championship race. And I realized something. Winning it won't mean anything if I can't share it with my best friend. Marcus's eyes got watery. But Louis, I can't come tomorrow. Saturday is our busiest day here. My parents need my help. I know. That's why I wanted to ask you something. Louis pulled a piece of paper from his pocket. What if we had our own race, just you and me, like old times? Marcus looked at the paper. It was a hand-drawn map of their neighborhood, with a route marked in red pen. The route started at their houses, went through Fairlands Valley Park, around the pond, past their old primary school, and back to where they started. A bike race? Marcus asked. Tomorrow morning, before I have to leave for the championship. Just like when we were little, when we used to race our bikes everywhere. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. You're serious? Dead serious. Winner gets bragging rights, and the loser has to buy sweets at Mr. Patel's corner shop. Louis, you know I'm faster than you on bikes, right? Louis grinned. We'll see about that. Marcus looked at the map again, then at Louis. Why are you doing this? Because 3 years ago, you and I made a promise that we'd race together someday. Maybe we can't both be in Formula One, but we can still race. just differently than we planned. The next morning, Lewis woke up before dawn. The championship race wasn't until afternoon, but he wanted this bike race with Marcus to be perfect. He checked his bike, made sure the tires were properly inflated, and even cleaned the chain like Mr. Chen had taught him when they worked on the go-kart. Marcus was waiting at the starting line they had marked in chalk on the pavement between their houses. He was wearing his old-school PE kit and had tied a bandana around his head like a real cyclist. "Ready to lose, Hamilton?" Marcus called out. "In your dreams, Chen," Lewis shot back, and suddenly they were both laughing like they used to. Mrs. Chen and Anthony came out to watch the start. Mrs. Chen had brought her camera, and Anthony held a proper checkered flag that Lewis had borrowed from his racing kit. "Gentlemen, start your engines," Anthony called out, playing along with the joke. "Ready, set, go," Mrs. Chen shouted, and Anthony dropped the flag. The boys shot forward on their bikes, pedaling hard down Peartree Way. Lewis had the early lead, but Marcus was right behind him. They turned into the park path, dodging early morning joggers and dog walkers. Around the pond, Marcus pulled ahead. He had always been the better bike rider, more willing to take risks on corners. Lewis tried to catch up on the straightaway, but Marcus was flying. By the time they reached the school, Marcus had a solid lead. But as they turned back toward home, Lewis found an extra gear. Maybe it was all his racing training, or maybe it was just determination, but he began closing the gap. The final stretch down their street was a sprint. Both boys were standing on their pedals, giving everything they had. Mrs. Johnson came out of her house to watch. Mr. Williams cheered from his garden. In the end, Marcus won by half a bike length. Both boys collapsed on the grass in front of Lewis's house, breathing hard and laughing. "I told you I was faster," Marcus gasped. "You got lucky," Lewis replied, but he was smiling. As they lay on the grass, looking up at the cloudy sky, Marcus said quietly, "Lewis, I want you to know something." "What?" "No matter what happens with your racing, no matter how famous you become or how far you travel, this will always be one of my favorite memories." Lewis felt his throat get tight. "Mine too." "And Lewis, when you win the championship today, and you will win, I'll be thinking about you. Even if I can't be there, I'll be cheering for you. Promise?" "Promise." They stood up and brushed grass off their clothes. Lewis had to leave soon for the biggest race of his young career. But first, he owed Marcus some sweets from the corner shop. As they walked to Mr. Patel's shop together, Lewis realized something important. Friendship wasn't about being together every moment. It wasn't about sharing every experience. It was about knowing that someone cared about you, believed in you, and would always be happy for your success, even when that success took you far away from home. "Marcus," Lewis said as they reached the shop. "Yeah? Thank you for understanding. About the racing, I mean. About why I have to do this." Marcus smiled. "Thank you for not forgetting about me. I could never forget about you. You're my best friend. Forever. Forever." That afternoon, Lewis won the Hertfordshire Youth Karting Championship by 12 seconds, the biggest margin of victory in the race's history. As he stood on the podium, holding the trophy above his head, he thought about Marcus and their bike race that morning. Both victories felt equally important. But Lewis didn't know that this would be the last race they would share together for many years. He didn't know that following your dreams sometimes means saying goodbye to the people you love most, even when you don't want to. He didn't know that growing up means learning that some friendships have to change shape to survive. But on that summer morning in 1997, racing bikes through their neighborhood, two 12-year-old boys learned something that would stay with them forever. Real friendship isn't about staying the same. It's about growing up without growing apart, even when the world tries to pull you in different directions. October 1997. 2 months after the bike race, Lewis Hamilton burst through the front door of his house, his racing suit still damp with champagne from another victory celebration. At 12 years old, he was becoming a sensation in the karting world. 3. Major racing teams had contacted Anthony about Lewis's future. There was talk of moving to a bigger racing program, possibly even relocating closer to the professional tracks. Lewis was buzzing with excitement and couldn't wait to share the news with Marcus. He had just won the British Youth Karting Championship, the biggest title of his career so far. The victory had come with a special prize, an invitation to test with a professional racing team in Belgium. It was the kind of opportunity that could change everything. Lewis grabbed the phone and dialed Marcus's number, bouncing on his feet as he waited for someone to answer. "Hello?" Mrs. Chen's voice sounded strained. "Hi, Mrs. Chen. It's Lewis. Is Marcus there? I have amazing news to tell him." There was a long pause. "Lewis, I'm sorry. Marcus he's sleeping. Can he call you tomorrow?" "Tomorrow? But, Mrs. Chen, I won the championship. I have to tell Marcus now." "I know, dear. Congratulations. I'm sure Marcus will be very proud. But he really can't come to the phone right now." Lewis heard something odd in her voice. Sadness, maybe fear. "Is everything okay?" Another pause. "Yes, everything is fine. Good night, Lewis." The phone clicked dead, leaving Lewis staring at the receiver in confusion. Mrs. Chen had never been short with him before, and Marcus always wanted to hear about Lewis's races, no matter how late it was. Something was wrong. The next morning, Lewis woke up early and ran to Marcus's house. He knocked their secret code on the door. 3 knocks, 2 knocks, 1 knock, but no one answered. He could see lights on inside, and he was sure he heard movement. Lewis knocked again, louder this time. Mr. Chen opened the door, but only part way. His face looked tired and worried. "Lewis, I'm sorry. This isn't a good time." "Mr. Chen, what's happening? Is Marcus sick? Why can't I talk to him?" Mr. Chen looked over his shoulder into the house, then stepped outside and closed the door behind him. "Lewis, sit with me for a moment." They sat on the front steps. Mr. Chen took off his glasses and cleaned them nervously. "Lewis, our family is going through a difficult time right now. Marcus needs some space." "Space from what?" "From me. Not from you specifically. Just space to deal with some things." Lewis felt panic rising in his chest. "Mr. Chen, did I do something wrong? Is Marcus angry at me about the racing?" "No, Lewis. You've done nothing wrong. You're a good friend to Marcus, the best friend anyone could ask for." "Then why can't I see him?" Mr. Chen was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was very soft. "Sometimes, Lewis, families have to make difficult decisions that hurt, but that we believe are necessary." "What kind of decisions?" Mr. Chen stood up slowly. "I'm sorry, Lewis. I can't say more right now, but please know that Marcus cares about you very much, and we are all very proud of your racing success." As Mr. Chen went back inside, Lewis sat on the steps, feeling more confused than ever. He waited for 2 hours, hoping Marcus would come out or look out his bedroom window, but the house stayed quiet. At school on Monday, Marcus's desk was empty. Mrs. Patterson said he was feeling unwell and would be back soon. But Tuesday came, then Wednesday, then Thursday, and Marcus's desk remained empty. On Friday afternoon, Louis couldn't stand it anymore. He skipped his after-school training session and went straight to the Chen family shop. The shop was closed. Not just closed for the day, properly closed. There was a "Shop closed, thank you for your custom" sign in the window. Through the glass, Louis could see empty shelves and boxes stacked everywhere. Louis ran home as fast as he could and burst into the kitchen where Anthony was reading the newspaper. "Dad, something's happened to the Chens. Their shop is closed, and Marcus hasn't been at school all week." Anthony looked up from his paper with an expression Louis couldn't read. "Dad, you know something. Tell me what's happening." Anthony set down his newspaper and sighed deeply. "Louis, sit down." "I don't want to sit down. I want to know where Marcus is. Louis, please, sit down." Louis reluctantly sat at the kitchen table. Anthony looked older than usual, tired. "Son, Mr. Chen called me yesterday. The family has moved to London." "London? Why? When?" "They left yesterday morning. Mr. Chen got a job opportunity there. Better money, better future for their family." Louis stared at his father. "But Marcus would have told me. We're best friends. He wouldn't just leave without saying goodbye." Anthony reached across the table and put his hand on Louis's shoulder. "Sometimes, son, goodbyes are too hard to say in person. That doesn't make sense. We promised we'd always be friends. We promised we'd never forget each other. And you won't forget each other. But Louis, sometimes life takes people in different directions, even when they don't want to go." Louis felt tears starting. "I don't understand. Why would they leave so suddenly? Why couldn't Marcus at least call me?" Anthony was quiet for a moment. Louis could tell he was choosing his words carefully. "Louis, the Chens are good people who love their son very much. Sometimes parents have to make hard choices for their children's future. But what about our friendship? What about all the plans we made? Those things are still important. They'll always be important. But Louis, you're becoming very successful in racing. Your life is going to change in big ways. Maybe this makes things easier for everyone." "Easier? How is losing my best friend easier?" Anthony looked sad. "Because now you can focus completely on your racing without worrying about leaving." "Anyone behind?" Louis ran upstairs to his room and slammed the door. He threw himself on his bed and cried harder than he had since he was little. The championship trophy sat on his desk, shining in the afternoon light, but it felt meaningless now. That evening, there was a soft knock on his bedroom door. Linda came in with a cup of tea and sat on the edge of his bed. "Louis, your father told me about Marcus." "It's not fair," Louis said into his pillow. "We were supposed to be friends forever." "You still are friends. Distance doesn't change that. But I don't even know where he is. I can't call him or write to him or anything." Linda was quiet for a moment. "Louis, can I tell you something?" "What?" "Sometimes people leave our lives not because they don't love us, but because they love us too much to hold us back." Louis looked up at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean that maybe Marcus and his family knew that your racing career was going to take you far away from Stevenage. Maybe they thought it would be easier for you if they weren't here to remind you of what you were leaving behind. But I don't want to leave anything behind. I know you don't. But Louis, greatness requires sacrifices, not just from you, but from the people who love you too." That night, Louis couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Marcus, wondering where he was, what he was doing, whether he was thinking about Louis too. Just before midnight, Lewis heard something at his bedroom door. He found an envelope that had been slipped underneath, his name written in Marcus's careful handwriting. With shaking hands, Lewis opened the letter. "Dear Lewis, by the time you read this, my family and I will be in London. I'm sorry I couldn't say goodbye in person. I'm not good at goodbyes, and I was afraid I would cry and make it harder for both of us. I want you to know that being your friend has been the best part of living in Stevenage. You taught me what real courage looks like. When you stood up to Tommy Miller, you showed me that dreams can come true when you work hard and never give up. You made me feel like I belonged somewhere, even when other people made me feel different. But Lewis, I also learned something else from our friendship. I learned that sometimes loving someone means letting them go so they can become who they're meant to be. You're going to be famous someday. I know it as surely as I know my own name. You're going to race in Formula One and win championships and inspire millions of people around the world. And when you do, I'll be watching every race, cheering for you, and feeling proud that I once knew Lewis Hamilton before the whole world discovered him. I'm not moving to London because I don't want to be your friend. I'm moving because I want you to focus on your dreams without worrying about me. You have a gift, Lewis. A gift that belongs to the world, not just to our little neighborhood in Stevenage. Don't forget me, but don't look back either. Fly as high as you can. Your friend forever, Marcus P.S. I kept one of your racing magazines, the one where you circled all the F1 drivers and said you'd be there someday. I believe you will." Lewis read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face. He finally understood what Marcus had done, and it made the goodbye even more painful. Marcus hadn't left because he didn't care. He had left because he cared too much. But understanding didn't make it hurt any less. Lewis folded the letter carefully and put it in his desk drawer, next to his racing trophies and certificates. It would stay there for years, a reminder of the friend who loved him enough to let him go. The next morning, Lewis looked out his bedroom window at Marcus's empty house. The "For Rent" sign in the front garden felt like a period at the end of a sentence he wasn't ready to finish. But Lewis also felt something else, something unexpected, a determination stronger than anything he had ever felt before. Marcus believed in him. Marcus had sacrificed their friendship because he was so sure Lewis would succeed. Lewis wasn't going to let that sacrifice be for nothing. He was going to become the racing driver Marcus knew he could be. And someday, somehow, he would find a way to thank his best friend for the gift of believing in him, even when it broke both their hearts. Sentence 6. Nearly 10 years later, Lewis Hamilton sat alone in his hotel room in Woking, staring at a contract that would change his life forever. Outside, the English rain drummed against the window, but Lewis barely noticed. In his hands was an offer from McLaren Formula One team, a chance to become the first black driver to race in the world's most prestigious motorsport series. He was 21 years old and about to achieve everything he had dreamed of since he was 8. But the room felt empty. Lewis reached into his travel bag and pulled out a worn piece of paper. Marcus's letter from 1997. He had carried it with him to every race, every championship, every milestone of his racing career. The paper was soft now from being folded and unfolded so many times. "You're going to be famous someday. I know it as surely as I know my own name." Marcus had been right. Lewis had climbed every step of the racing ladder. Karting championships, Formula Renault, Formula 3, GP2. Each victory had brought him closer to Formula One, and each victory had reminded him of the friend who wasn't there to share it. Over the years, Lewis had tried to find Marcus. He'd searched online, hired private investigators, even called every Chen family in London phone books. But Marcus seemed to have vanished completely. Sometimes Lewis wondered if Marcus was watching his races on television. Did he see Lewis win the European Formula 3 Championship? Did he watch when Lewis dominated GP2? Did he know that his childhood friend was about to make history? The hotel phone rang, interrupting Lewis's thoughts. Hello? Lewis, it's Ron Dennis. Have you made your decision about the contract? Ron Dennis was the head of McLaren, the man who could make Lewis's Formula One dreams come true. I'm signing it tonight, Lewis said. This is what I've worked for my whole life. Excellent. Lewis, you understand the pressure you'll be under? The media attention? Being the first black driver in Formula One means you'll be carrying more than just your own hopes. Lewis looked at Marcus's letter again. I understand. Good. Welcome to McLaren, Lewis. Welcome to Formula One. After hanging up, Lewis signed the contract with a pen that felt heavier than it should have. Every signature brought him closer to his dream, but also further from the boy who used to race bikes around Stevenage with his best friend. That night, Lewis called his father. Dad, I signed with McLaren. I'm going to be in Formula One. Anthony's voice was filled with pride and emotion. Son, I am so proud of you. We've come so far from that little garage in Stevenage. Dad, do you ever think about the Chens? About Marcus? There was a pause. Why do you ask? I wish I could share this with him. I wish I could tell him that his letter kept me going through all the hard times. Lewis, I'm sure wherever Marcus is, he's proud of you. But Dad, what if he needed me? What if I was so focused on racing that I missed signs that he was in trouble? Anthony was quiet for a moment. Son, you were 12 years old. You couldn't have known what was happening with the Chen family. What do you mean? What was happening? Lewis, the Chens didn't just move for a job opportunity. There were other reasons. Lewis felt his heart skip. What other reasons? I promised Mr. Chen I would never tell you. But son, you're a man now. Maybe it's time you knew the truth. Lewis gripped the phone tighter. Tell me. Marcus was sick, Lewis. That's why they moved to London so suddenly. He needed specialist medical care that wasn't available in Stevenage. The world seemed to stop spinning. Sick? What kind of sick? I don't know all the details. Mr. Chen was very private about it, but it was serious enough that they had to uproot their entire life. Lewis felt like he couldn't breathe. So Marcus didn't leave because he wanted to help my career. He left because he was sick. Maybe both, son. Maybe the family thought it was better to let you focus on racing instead of worrying about things you couldn't control. After hanging up, Lewis sat in the darkness of his hotel room, feeling like the biggest fool in the world. All these years, he had believed Marcus left as a noble sacrifice for Lewis's career. But the truth was simpler and more heartbreaking. Marcus had been fighting a battle Lewis knew nothing about. 2007, Lewis's first Formula One season, Lewis's rookie season was extraordinary. He won his first race, then another, then another. The media called him a sensation, a prodigy, a future world champion. The pressure was enormous, but so was the support. After every race, Lewis would look into the cameras during interviews and wonder if Marcus was watching. He began mentioning his childhood friend in some interviews, hoping Marcus might hear and know that Lewis remembered him. My motivation comes from many places, Lewis told a reporter after winning the Canadian Grand Prix, but especially from a friend who believed in me before I believed in myself. The championship came down to the final race in Brazil. Lewis needed to finish in the top 5 to become the youngest world champion in Formula One history. As he sat in his car on the starting grid, he touched the small piece of paper tucked inside his racing suit. Marcus's letter, which he now carried to every race. Lewis finished second in the championship that day, losing by just 1 point. It was heartbreaking, but also the beginning of something even greater. 2008, Lewis becomes world champion. The following year, Lewis won his first world championship in dramatic fashion, clinching the title on the final corner of the final lap of the final race. As he climbed out of his car, tears streaming down his face, his first thought was of Marcus. During the victory celebration, Lewis was asked about his childhood and what had driven him to achieve so much so young. "I had a best friend when I was little," Lewis said, his voice thick with emotion. "He taught me that real courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right even when you're scared. He believed I would be here someday, long before I believed it myself." Lewis looked directly into the camera. "Marcus, if you're watching this, thank you. This championship belongs to both of us." Guidance 10. The search continues despite his success. On track, Lewis couldn't stop thinking about Marcus. He hired better private investigators, used social media, even appeared on television shows asking for help finding his childhood friend. Nothing worked. Marcus Chen seemed to have disappeared from the world entirely. Lewis began to fear the worst. What if Marcus's illness had been more serious than anyone realized? What if that's why no one could find him? 2015. A clue. After winning his second world championship, Lewis was doing charity work at a children's hospital in London. As he walked through the wards, meeting young patients and their families, a nurse approached him. "Mr. Hamilton, there's someone here who says he knows you. He's been following your career for years." Lewis's heart jumped. Could it be? The nurse led him to a quiet room where a man in his early 30s sat, reading to a group of sick children. The man looked up when Lewis entered, and Lewis saw familiar dark eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. It wasn't Marcus, but it was someone Lewis recognized. "Dr. Chen?" Lewis said uncertainly. The man smiled sadly. "Hello, Lewis. I was wondering when we'd meet again." It was Marcus's older cousin David, who had studied medicine in London and now worked at the hospital. "David, I've been looking for Marcus for years. Please, can you tell me where he is?" David looked around at the children, then gestured for Lewis to follow him to a private office. "Lewis, sit down. There's something you need to know about Marcus. Something we should have told you years ago." Lewis's hands shook as he sat down. After all these years of searching, he was finally going to learn the truth. "Is he alive?" Lewis asked quietly. David nodded. "Yes, he's alive. But Lewis, the reason you can't find him, the reason our family moved so suddenly..." David took a deep breath. "Marcus has been fighting a rare genetic condition his entire life. Something that affects his muscles and heart." Lewis felt the room spinning. "How bad is it?" "It's progressive. It gets worse over time." Marcus knew this when he was 12, Lewis. He knew that writing you that letter and leaving was probably the right thing to do. Not just for your career, but because he didn't want you to watch him get sicker. Lewis stared at David, trying to process this information. Where is he now? He's been in and out of hospitals for years. But Lewis, he's also been watching every single one of your races. He has newspaper clippings of all your victories. He calls you my champion when he talks about you to the nurses. Lewis felt tears starting. "I want to see him." David hesitated. "Lewis, You need to understand. Marcus looks very different now. The illness has changed him physically. And he's very sick. I don't care. He's my best friend. I should have been there for him. You were there for him, David said gently. Your success, your championships, watching you achieve everything he knew you could achieve. That's been his joy through all the difficult times. David reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a folder. He made me promise to give you this if you ever found us. Inside the folder were dozens of newspaper clippings about Lewis's racing career, photographs from magazines, and a new letter in Marcus's handwriting. Shakier now, but still recognizable. Lewis opened the letter with trembling hands. Dear Lewis, if you're reading this, it means you found us. I always knew you would eventually. You never were good at giving up on people you cared about. First, I want you to know how proud I am of everything you've accomplished. Every race you've won, every championship, every time you've used your platform to help others. It's been exactly what I knew you would do. I'm sorry I've been hiding from you for so long. I was scared that seeing me sick would distract you from your racing, or make you feel guilty for being healthy and successful while I was struggling. But I realize now that I was wrong. Friendship isn't about protecting each other from hard truths. It's about facing them together. I'm ready to see you now, Lewis, if you want to see me. But I need you to know something first. This illness has taken a lot from me, but it hasn't taken my memories of our friendship. It hasn't taken the joy I feel watching you race. And it hasn't taken my belief that you're going to keep making history. Your friend always, Marcus P.S. I still have that racing magazine where you circled all the F1 drivers. Your name is written in the margin now, right where it belongs. Lewis wiped his eyes and looked at David. When can I see him? He's here, in this hospital. Has been for 3 weeks now. Lewis stood up, his legs shaky. Take me to him, please. As they walked down the hospital corridor, Lewis realized that this moment, seeing Marcus again after all these years, was more important than any race he had ever won. Some victories weren't measured in trophies or championships. Some victories were simply about showing up for the people you loved, no matter how much time had passed, no matter how much everything had changed. Lewis's heart pounded as he followed David down the hospital corridor. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the smell of disinfectant reminded him of all the times he had visited injured drivers over the years. But this was different. This wasn't about racing. This was about friendship, about truth, about 18 years of wondering and hoping. Room 304, David said softly, stopping outside a door with a small window. Lewis, before you go in, I want you to prepare yourself. Marcus looks very different from the boy you remember. Lewis nodded, but his hands were shaking. Through the window, he could see a figure in the hospital bed, turned away from the door. Medical equipment surrounded the bed, monitors beeping quietly, tubes and wires connecting to machines Lewis didn't understand. Does he know I'm coming? Lewis asked. I called him after you left to sign your contract with McLaren. Told him you might try to find him someday. He's been hoping for this day, but also dreading it. Lewis took a deep breath and knocked gently on the door. Come in, came a voice from inside. It was weaker than Lewis remembered, but unmistakably Marcus. Lewis pushed the door open slowly. The man in the hospital bed was thin, much thinner than the Marcus from Lewis's memories. His black hair was shorter now, and his face looked older than his 29 years. But when he turned to look at Lewis, his eyes were exactly the same. Kind, intelligent, and now filling with tears. Hello, Lewis, Marcus said softly. Louis felt his throat close up. He tried to speak, but couldn't find any words. Marcus smiled, that same gentle smile Louis remembered from their childhood. "You can come closer. I won't break." Louis walked slowly to the chair beside the bed and sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other, trying to bridge 18 years with their eyes. "You're taller than I expected," Marcus said finally, and Louis burst out laughing despite his tears. "You're exactly the same," Louis replied, and they both knew he meant it in the ways that mattered most. "Louis, I owe you an explanation about why I disappeared, about why I've been hiding from you all these years." Louis shook his head. "David told me about your illness." "Marcus, why didn't you tell me when we were kids? Why didn't you let me help?" Marcus shifted carefully in his bed, and Louis could see how much effort even small movements required. "Because we were 12 years old, Louis. Because you had dreams, bigger than both of us. And because—" Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. "Sweet, because I knew that if you found out I was sick, you would have given up racing to stay with me." "Of course I would have. You were my best friend." "Exactly. And that would have been the biggest tragedy of all." Marcus reached over to his bedside table and picked up a scrapbook. The cover was worn and the pages were thick with newspaper clippings, magazine articles, and photographs. "This is my Lewis Hamilton collection," Marcus said with a weak smile. "Every race, every championship, every interview where you mentioned friendship or believing in yourself." Louis opened the scrapbook with trembling hands. The first page had a photo of Louis in his yellow go-kart from 1994, standing next to Anthony and Mr. Chen in the garage. Someone had written "Where it all began" underneath in Marcus's careful handwriting. Page after page showed Louis's journey from karting to Formula One. Marcus had documented everything: race results, championship celebrations, even articles about Louis's charity work and activism. "You kept track of everything," Louis whispered. "I told you I'd be watching and cheering for you." "I meant it." Louis turned to a page from 2008, his first World Championship celebration. The headline read, "Hamilton makes history," and there was a photo of Louis holding the championship trophy. In the margin, Marcus had written, "I knew it. So proud of my friend." "Marcus, all these years you've been sick, and you spent your time following my career. Louis, watching you succeed has been the joy of my life. Every time you won a race, every time you stood up for something you believed in, every time you used your platform to help others, it reminded me of the 8-year-old boy who stood up to Tommy Miller to protect his friend." Marcus coughed, and Louis could see how tired he was getting. "But I need to tell you something else. Something I should have told you years ago." Louis set down the scrapbook. "What?" Marcus looked directly into Louis's eyes. "The reason my family moved to London wasn't just for my medical treatment. It was also because we found out that my condition is genetic." Louis felt confused. "What does that mean?" "It means it runs in families. It means that when I have children someday, there's a chance they could have it too." Marcus's voice got quieter. "And Louis, there's something else about this condition that the doctors told us when I was 12. Marcus paused, gathering strength. "Most people with my condition don't live past 35. The words hit Louis like a physical blow. He stared at Marcus, trying to process what he had just heard. 35? But you're 29 now. That means I probably have 5 or 6 good years left. Maybe less." Louis felt the room spinning. No, that can't be right. Medicine has improved. There must be treatments, experimental, drugs, something. Marcus smiled sadly. Lewis, I've tried everything. My family has spent every penny they had on treatments, specialists, experimental therapies. This is just what my life is. But why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you wait until now? Because I wanted you to achieve your dreams first. I wanted you to become the champion I knew you could be without worrying about me. Lewis stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, London continued its normal rhythm. People walking, cars passing, life moving forward as if nothing had changed. But Lewis's world had just been turned upside down. All this time, Lewis said, not turning around, I thought you left because you believed in me. But really, you left because you were dying. Both things are true, Lewis. I left because I believed in you so much that I was willing to sacrifice our friendship to help you succeed. And yes, I also left because I knew I was living on borrowed time and I didn't want you to watch me get sicker. Lewis turned back to face his friend. But Marcus, don't you understand? None of my success means anything if I can't share it with the people I love. All these championships, all these victories, they feel empty because you weren't there. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. They weren't empty, Lewis. Every single one of those victories gave me hope. Every time you proved that a kid from Stevenage could make it to the top of the world, it reminded me that miracles are possible. What miracle? You just told me you're going to die. The miracle isn't that I might live longer, Lewis. The miracle is that I got to live long enough to see my best friend become everything I knew he could be. Lewis sat back down, his head in his hands. I don't know how to process this. I don't know what to do. You don't have to do anything. Just be my friend, like you always were. They sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of 18 years and a terminal diagnosis settling between them. Finally, Marcus spoke again. Lewis, can I ask you something? Anything. In all these years of success, of fame, of traveling the world, have you been happy? Lewis thought about the question honestly. Sometimes, when I'm racing, when I'm winning, when I'm using my platform to help people. But Lewis, there's always been something missing. Someone missing. I'm sorry I put you through that. Don't apologize. But Marcus, I need you to promise me something. What? Promise me that whatever time you have left, we spend some of it together. Really together. Like we used to be. Marcus smiled through his tears. I'd like that very much. And promise me you'll let me help. Whatever you need, medical bills, treatments, just someone to sit with you. Let me be your friend. Lewis, you don't understand how expensive this condition is. My family has already spent everything. Marcus, I'm a Formula One world champion. I have more money than I know what to do with. Let me use it for something that actually matters. Marcus stared at him. You would do that? I would do anything for you. I should have been doing it all along. Marcus reached out and grabbed Lewis's hand. His grip was weak, but his eyes were strong. Thank you, he whispered, for not giving up on me, for finding me, for still being my friend after all this time. Thank you for believing in me when we were 8 years old, for teaching me what courage looks like, for showing me that real friendship never dies, even when everything else changes. As the afternoon turned to evening, Lewis sat beside Marcus's bed, finally understanding the full weight of his childhood friend's sacrifice. Marcus hadn't just given up their friendship to help Lewis's career. He had spent his limited time on Earth celebrating Lewis's achievements instead of dwelling on his own struggles. It was the most selfless act of love Lewis had ever encountered, and it made him more determined than ever to make sure that whatever time Marcus had left would be filled with joy, friendship, and the knowledge that his belief in Lewis Hamilton had changed the world. Because some secrets, Lewis realized, are kept not to hurt people, but to protect them. And some friendships are so strong they can survive 18 years of separation and still pick up exactly where they left off, even when time is running out. Back to Silverstone Circuit, 2024. The present Lewis Hamilton leaned back in his chair in the media center, watching the faces of the reporters who had listened to his story in complete silence. The room that had been buzzing with activity an hour ago was now still as a church. Some journalists had tears in their eyes. Others sat with their notebooks forgotten, completely absorbed in the tale of friendship, sacrifice, and love that Lewis had just shared. The young reporter who had asked the original question about his childhood was crying openly. "So Marcus is still in your life?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lewis smiled, and for the first time in the entire interview, he looked truly happy. "Marcus is at every race I can get him to. He works now as a racing engineer consultant for young drivers, kids who need someone to believe in them the way he believed in me. His condition has stabilized somewhat, thank God. The doctors were wrong about the timeline, or maybe Marcus is just too stubborn to follow their predictions," Lewis chuckled. "He likes to say that watching me race gives him a reason to stick around longer." Another reporter raised his hand. "Lewis, why are you telling this story now? Why today?" Lewis looked directly into the main camera, as if he could see through it to someone specific. "Because Marcus gave me permission to tell it. For years, he asked me not to share our story publicly. He didn't want sympathy or to be seen as inspiration for being sick. But recently, something changed his mind." Lewis paused, collecting his thoughts. 3 weeks ago, Marcus and I were watching a young driver test at Silverstone. A 12-year-old kid, incredibly talented but struggling with confidence. During a break, this kid comes up to us and says, "Mr. Hamilton, how do you stay brave when everything feels scary?" The room was completely silent, and Marcus looked at this kid and said, "You know what? I think it's time people heard a story about real bravery." That's when he told me I could share our story, because he realized that our friendship, the whole journey, including his illness, might help other people understand what courage really looks like. Lewis leaned forward, his voice getting stronger. "See, the world knows about my racing achievements. They know about championships and pole positions and lap records, but what they don't know is that everything good about my character, everything that made me who I am, I learned from an 8-year-old boy who faced bullying, illness, and loss with more grace than most adults ever manage." A reporter from the IUA back called out, "What has Marcus taught you about facing challenges?" That being brave doesn't mean being fearless. It means doing what's right, even when you're terrified. Marcus taught me that when he stood with me against Tommy Miller. He taught me that when he sacrificed our friendship to help my career. And he's still teaching me that now, every day he chooses to focus on helping young drivers instead of feeling sorry for himself. Lewis's voice grew emotional. "Marcus has shown me that the most important victories aren't the ones that happen on racetracks. They're the ones that happen in your heart, in your relationships, in the way you treat other people when nobody's watching." The same young reporter spoke up again. Can you tell us more about what Marcus does now? He works with the Lewis Hamilton Foundation, helping identify and support young drivers from underrepresented backgrounds, kids who might not otherwise get a chance in motorsport. He's particularly good at spotting talent in kids who don't fit the typical racing mold, kids who might be overlooked because of where they come from or what they look like. Lewis smiled. Marcus has this theory that the best racing drivers aren't always the ones with the most money or the best equipment. They're the ones with the biggest hearts and the strongest determination. He should know. He helped build the first racing driver I ever knew. A veteran motorsport journalist raised his hand. Lewis, how has this friendship influenced your advocacy, work, and activism? Everything I do off the track comes from lessons Marcus taught me when we were kids. Standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Using whatever platform you have to help others. Never forgetting where you came from or the people who believed in you first. Lewis looked around the room. Marcus taught me that success without purpose is just noise. Every time I speak out about diversity in motorsport, every time I use my platform to support young drivers, every time I try to make racing more inclusive, I'm honoring the 8-year-old boy who showed me what real friendship looks like. The room erupted with questions, but Lewis held up his hand. I want to say something directly to Marcus, because I know he's watching this. Lewis looked straight into the main camera, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Marcus, you've spent 30 years believing in me, supporting me, and celebrating my success from the sidelines. You've never asked for credit or recognition. You've just been the best friend anyone could ask for. His voice cracked slightly. But I need the world to know that Lewis Hamilton, the racing driver, exists because Marcus Chen, the friend, chose love over fear, hope over despair, and generosity over bitterness. Every championship I've won belongs to both of us. Lewis paused, swallowing hard. You taught me that courage isn't about winning races. It's about showing up for the people you love, even when it costs you everything. You taught me that real friendship means believing in someone's dreams so much that you're willing to sacrifice your own happiness to help them achieve those dreams. He leaned closer to the camera. And Marcus, you were wrong about one thing. In that letter you wrote when we were 12, you said your gift was believing in me, but your real gift was teaching me how to believe in myself, how to stand up for others, and how to use whatever success I achieved to make the world a little bit better. Lewis sat back, wiping his eyes. The 8-year-old boy who stood up to a bully to protect his friend is still inside me. He's there every time I speak out against injustice. He's there every time I try to help a young driver get their first chance. He's there every time I remember that being successful means nothing. If you don't use that success to lift others up, the room was completely silent, except for the soft sound of cameras clicking. So, thank you, Marcus, Lewis continued. Thank you for 30 years of friendship. Thank you for teaching me that the best victories are the ones you share with people you love. And thank you for showing me that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting someone go so they can become who they're meant to be. Lewis stood up from his chair, signaling that the interview was over. That's our story. A story about 2 kids from Stevenage who dreamed about racing cars and learned what really matters in life. I hope it helps someone out there understand that friendship, real friendship, can survive anything: distance, time, illness, even success. He walked toward the door, then turned back one final time. And to any kid out there who's being bullied, who feels different, who thinks they don't belong, you do belong. Find your people. Stand up for each other. and never ever give up on your dreams or the people who believe in you. As Lewis left the media center, reporters were already typing furiously, knowing they had just witnessed something special. Not just a Formula One driver talking about his childhood, but a master class in friendship, loyalty, and the kind of love that changes lives. An hour later, Lewis's phone rang. The caller ID made him smile. "Did you watch the interview?" Lewis asked. "Every word," Marcus replied, and Lewis could hear the tears in his friend's voice. "Are you ready for everyone to know our story?" "I'm ready," Lewis said. "It's time the world met the real hero of my success story." "Lewis?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for never forgetting me. Thank you for never giving up on us. Thank you for believing in me when I was 8 years old and didn't believe in myself. Thank you for teaching me what courage looks like. See you at the next race? Wouldn't miss it," Lewis said. "We've got more dreams to chase." As Lewis hung up the phone, he looked out at the Silverstone paddock where he had first learned to race all those years ago. The track where a shy 8-year-old had discovered his calling, where two families had come together to build more than just a go-kart, where friendship had proven stronger than time, distance, or even illness. The boy from Stevenage had become a world champion, but he had never forgotten the friend who helped him find his courage. And in the end, that was the story that mattered most. The story of two 8-year-old boys who promised to be friends forever, and kept that promise no matter what the world threw at them. Because some friendships are stronger than fame, more enduring than success, and more powerful than any force that tries to break them apart, even time itself. We'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and tell us what city or country you're in. Stories like this connect people from all around the world, and we love hearing from our global community. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It really helps us reach more people who might need to hear about the power of true friendship. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one. We share real stories about real people who've made a difference in the world. Most importantly, please share this video with your friends and family. In a world that can sometimes feel divided, stories about kindness, loyalty, and standing up for others remind us what really matters. Let's spread awareness about the friendships that shape us and the courage it takes to believe in someone's dreams, even when it costs us everything. Thank you for listening. And remember, like Lewis and Marcus showed us, real friendship never dies. It just finds new ways to make the world a little bit better.